Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Metal Meresco. We have another amazing guest today. We have Gaby from RPF Education. She's a personal finance coach, which I'm super excited to talk about and learn more about her. So, with that being said, Gaby, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited. I'm doing well. This kind of crazy weather in LA, so my
Mm.
asthma is like fighting for life right now. So if I start coughing, sorry about that.
No, you're good. I understand. So let's get started. What the first question is: how did RPF Education get started? The what were those experiences? Was this part of the plan? When did you actually commit to doing the business? Because having a business is a commitment at the end of the day. So yeah, tell us a bit of how that got started, and even the name of it. How did you came up with the name?
All right, so it's a big question.
A
You
big
know,
question.
the things that people ask me, and it's a like crazy, awesome, beautiful, chaotic story, I feel. So, I'm actually a teacher. I've had a decade-long career in education. I have 3 degrees in education.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and humbly speaking, I'm a pretty good teacher. Uh, and yeah, so that was always kind of in the background. So the reason I bring that up is because I got a master's degree from Columbia, from Teachers College, and I don't know if you guys know about Columbia, but it's a little pricey. So your girl has a lot of student loan debt. So a few
Gotcha.
years ago, I was like, okay, we need to get it together because 6 figures of student loan debt is like crippling. And I'm making good money, but I'm not seeing anything happen. So I started just reading, like especially because this was around COVID, like I had nothing else to do. Like I mean, teaching music, so like marching band and like all of these rehearsals after school. So I was used to like 12-hour days to now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what do I do now? So I started reading. I read like 75 books and podcasts. Like I was really intense about it. Like, okay, to my wife, like, babe, I got a plan. Like, this is what we're gonna do. And so last year, like on January, I remember it was January 6th, 2022. I don't know why it was that day. It was the of the insurrection, is that it was not planned at all. But that's when it happened. And initially we started posting on TikTok as just like accountability for ourselves. Like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what our situation is. Like I would post like budget with me videos. Like, and that's exactly what I would do with my money. And the same thing with Luce. Like we would talk about she's in real estate. So we talk a lot about like the relationship between like our real estate goals, our personal finance goals, and etc. So and then as like things kept going, I realized like people started asking questions. And I was like, oh, like everybody has these questions and everybody's confused about this. And I'm still a teacher and I work full time in Maywood, which is a low income community. It's actually the highest proportion of undocumented people in LA County. And so there's all of my students, almost all my students are like first generation. And they were so hungry for this like financial literacy. And
Oh
I,
wow.
I realized like, one, plain lit is not taught in schools formally, right? I think only 18 states require it. What is
Really?
that? And yeah, secondly is like what's the quality of those financial literacy classes? And if you look at the samples of like low socioeconomic class to effective like financial literacy, it's not great.
Yeah,
Um,
can
I
imagine.
have a lot of thoughts about that, and I have a lot of theories, but we would just need like an entire talk about that. And so
Episode
basically,
2.
yeah, exactly. This kind of happened naturally, and then I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want. Like, I want to do this. Because I want to help. Like, I just kept picturing my kids, like my little 16, 17-year-old teenagers, 5 years from now, they went to college, they have that great job. But if somebody doesn't teach them, or if they don't learn, if they're not empowered to understand like wealth management, money management, then it's not gonna like result into any big kind of change, right?
Yeah.
And we have to acknowledge that like for especially our first gen community, the context of our personal finances can be really different. So for example, there might be more pressure to perhaps take care of your parents once they're older because they were so busy putting food on the table
Yeah.
literally that it's not like they had a retirement saving, you know what I mean? And so I think we need to understand that as well. And
Yeah.
so I think it was in August, I started being like, I'm a personal finance coach. This is what I do. And it kind of just naturally
Naturally one.
escalated. Um, and now here we are. I went viral in Paris 2 weeks ago, like just random. I was at like 4,300 followers for like months. And then this random video of me talking about whether you should pay off your debt or like credit card debt or focus on savings went viral. And yeah, it's escalated incredibly so. Like you reached out to me, and then 2 days later, a writer from HuffPost reached out to me. So I have
Oh
that
wow.
article coming out tomorrow.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. Congrats.
yeah, and then like a creator reached out to me. So I had like a creator brunch yesterday. It's just been like all of a sudden.
Really?
Yeah, and we have like we've 3x our clients, and like I'm just so excited because it's exactly the population of people that I want to work with. It's like
Mm,
they're like, I have no idea what to do. Help me. And I'm like,
yeah.
all right, let's do it, honey. So I hope that answered your question. I know that
No,
was
it did, and
super.
there's like so many like things like we could touch upon because I feel like with the people I've interviewed, it's a lot about. It's usually like, oh, I this wasn't part of the plan, and then because you were like intentional and this was like for you like to learn, and then sharing your what you're learning with others. That's kind of like a good intention, and you're gonna have like exponential growth, and that's why like all these amazing things are happening. But before we go more into those things, my next question is, when you started the business,
Mhm.
what were some of the obstacles that you faced? Cause, and obstacles, I don't mean like they, or obstacles like not that you overcame them, but or that you overcame or that you're still trying to overcome. Because recently I read this book called The Big Leap. I don't know if you
Yeah.
heard about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that book is really interesting, and I read it last week, and it really helped me out. But it pretty much talks about how we have a thermostat, and we have a set level of like the happiness we have, the finances, all of that, the success that we have, and once we hit that level, you tend to self sabotage. So for you, how is that experience on like yeah, that awareness?
So it's so interesting, and I don't know what happened. But I didn't realize that I wanted. Like, I don't think I fully embodied the. I'm a personal finance coach. I
Mm.
founded a personal finance, like a financial literacy education business. I don't think that happened until like July, August, right? But
Mm.
what's crazy is that I formed an LLC, like RPF Education, in February, like months before. And it was this like
Mm.
kind of thing. It was just like, I don't know how to explain it. There's this book called like Big Magic. I
Oh, I've
like
heard about it.
really recommend it. It's all about like following your like creativity essentially,
Mm.
right? Um, and I don't know. I just woke up one day and I was like, I'm doing this. It was really easy. I'm done. I just in my the back of my head, something told me like, all right, this is what you want to call it. So like, save the LLC, like form the business, and like
Mm.
apply for a checking account. There was no money coming in yet. You know, it was just the audacity. And I think what happens is like there's just moments in your life where you have that what feels like the audacity to like try,
Mm.
and you have to chase that and you have to keep going for it.
Mm.
And um the obstacles that I had, like I felt ridiculous posting on TikTok. Not even gonna lie. Like I have a lot of anxiety, like diagnosed anxiety. I remember like I would just be in bed and then all of a sudden it's like 1 a.m. and I'd be like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. Like um and yeah, because I was posting 2 to 3 times a day for
Mm.
50 and 5 days before I really saw that growth that people
Mm.
were talking about,
Yeah.
And that was a big obstacle. It was like the mindset. It was like being able to say, I am a personal finance coach. I work with these people. Like,
Mm.
and it was so interesting. I felt like as soon as I started verbalizing it, like it just started becoming true. It's like I think it's one of those how what we speak is kind of tied to our manifestation, is tied to
Yeah.
how people view you is going to be how you view yourself, and it's
Mm-hmm.
reciprocal kind of relationship. That mindset is huge. And then like I definitely struggle with imposter syndrome of like, I'm a teacher, like, put me in the classroom and I'm like not stressed at all.
Mm.
I mean, really. But now entering this more entrepreneurial space, like I don't know, like what,
Yeah.
and I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate that my parents are also entrepreneurs, and so
Mm.
like it was a whole thing when I finally like talked to them. okay, and like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what are business finances? And I'll just know personal finance really well. But getting into like the business finance is a little
It's
different.
another thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we sat down and like started talking to them and figuring out just what I wanted this to look like and how
Mm,
I wanted to incorporate the equity piece, right? And making
mm,
it accessible for the community that I want to work with. Because at the end of the day, if like I have a client who has $55,000 of debt in collections, how am I going to be like, okay, but you have to work with me and it costs $200? Like,
yeah.
bro, what? So, and finding the balance of like, hey, this is what I do, and my time is worthwhile. It is worth something. But also, I want this to be something that you can actually attain, something that we can
Accessible.
actually, exactly, that accessibility piece, that equity piece is really important. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, if I put it in one sentence for you, the obstacles that I've had to overcome would have to do with mindset, and with acknowledging that despite I don't know something, that I don't have knowledge,
Mm,
I have the resources, I have the network to find it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being open and genuine and authentic about the fact that you are building something and that
mm,
people come along like, hey, we're now building this together, you know?
yeah. I feel like how, but how were you able to have those, like, where other books or resources or conversations, like specific conversations that you were having where you were able to have this, like, this mindset now? Because I feel like that's where people, a lot of people struggle, where, like, yeah, I get that I have to think about positive stuff or whatever, but it's hard. So for you, how did that look during? Because I think at the end it's like a journey thing. So it's not
Yeah.
gonna happen like a one day to another. So what were those little things that you were doing where you were able to get into like, okay, this is my prize, the balance of all of that, yeah.
So I think it started off small. Like obviously I'm an avid reader. I love reading and I a lot of not only personal finance but like self-help, like business, kind of like development.
Yeah, in all areas.
Um I know it's a little basic, but I think it's basic because it's such a good book. Atomic Habits is really great. Like that the whole
Yeah.
idea of like just have to get 1% better. 1% better, like 1%
Yep.
better. That's really helpful. Then like I just started speaking about finances a lot, like with anybody who would listen.
Mm.
People would come up. If you're out with friends or something like that, like money does come up, and maybe we don't talk about it in this like really deep kind of way,
Mm.
but it does get mentioned. And it's like, and so then I would just kind of be like, oh, do you all have a high yield savings account? You know what I mean? Like I kind of like slip it in. And so, and same thing like with family, I started becoming known as like, hey, that's somebody who knows about money. And then people
Mm.
just text me. I remember like last year, uh, I had two colleagues ask me how to read their pay stub. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, let me come over. Like I'll sat with them for like 12 minutes. And I was like, I went through every single thing. Another colleague of mine was like, hey, I want to like, I saw that you talk about like Roth IRAs. I've never done that. Like, how do I do that? And
Mm.
so again, I'm just becoming known as having a reputation of
Yeah.
understanding money management. Um, and then from there, like it kind of like snowballs on you.
Yeah,
But
it's like a ripple effect.
yeah, exactly. The change, like it, and I knew that everybody was saying this, but feeling it and experiencing it is something else. It's
Mm.
that they talk about exponential growth, right? And that exponential growth is like this, but they rarely talk about the amount of the time of the graph where it's like nothing, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Mm.
And for me, it was 15 months. Like that's a long time. Um, and so, yeah, I think that happened. I started giving like since I have access to my teenagers who are like amazing,
Mm.
they're people. But I started talking to them about money, and they were like, okay, so now it became this thing. Like as soon as they turn 18, they were like, all right, what do we do? Like let's.
Mm.
And so then I kind of developed what coaching looks like
Mm.
with,
Or the kid.
and yeah, exactly. And my thought is if I can get a 16-year-old to understand money management and wealth accumulation principles, then I can get anybody to understand, right?
Yeah.
And that's where that teaching piece, like I kind of felt like initially I was kind of splitting apart. Like I'm a teacher.
Mm.
I love that about me. But that has been like the biggest asset, because one of the biggest things, most common things that I get over and over again, it's like, oh, I understand it when you say it. Like, oh my God, I wish everybody spoke like that. And it's like, oh yeah, it's almost like pedagogy and teaching is a skill. Like it's a thing
It
that we work
is.
on, you know? And so yeah, I think the how did it happen? It's just gradually and be patient, and no matter
Mm.
what, just show up. Like just show up and
Yeah.
1% better than you were.
Yeah, and it makes like so much sense because like, even like for me, like I haven't done like with the podcast, I've never done anything like this, and
Yeah.
I've always struggled to start. But and even like before that, the last year, I was really working a lot of like reading books, podcasts, a lot of that, and I think that's really what helped me where that became a bit more normalized, you could say, where in January I took that leap of okay, I'm gonna send those emails and like see what happens. And now I'm gonna make 2 months. No, I'm gonna make 2 months in May when this episode comes out. I'm gonna make 2 months. So it's crazy where those little steps really do influence the growth of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so exciting. So in May, that'll be your 2 month anniversary. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. That's super exciting.
It is. Going back to now because I feel like uh, with the same obstacles, I feel like again it's a journey where they always come back those limiting beliefs. So what's something that you're working on now, whether it's like personal or in your business as well, that you're like, or maybe you're not working on, maybe like everything's cool
No,
right
and
now.
done. No, yeah, don't worry, we're good. No,
Let's not talk about it.
yeah, right. No, always working on something. So, what is something that I'm working on now um, in terms of RPF, and I called it that because it's realistic personal finance education. And so that was a big thing for me is the realistic aspect. And it's not like I hate there's so many shame-based like personal finance people out there that are like, what do you mean you have this much debt? An idiot? Like that doesn't help anyone, you know? Like the realistic aspect of acknowledging what you value, what you want, whether it's travel, whether it's self-care, whether it's like, going out for dinner and drinks, like
Yeah.
whatever it is, we have to incorporate that into your personal finance plan. Otherwise, not realistic and it's not sustainable. And at that point, right? Um, you'll usually end up giving up.
Yeah.
Anyway, the current struggle I would say is I don't feel like I've found that exact like, okay, this is what I can charge. This is what it looks like. Still an ongoing process. Because like I said, I really value that equity and that accessibility, but my time is worthwhile, you
Yeah.
know? And so how I've decided to deal with it actually is a little weird, a little chaotic. But April and May, so all of my sessions are actually pro bono. And so it
It's
come
free.
over like it's literally pro bono. And what I'm working on is trying to build a community, that loyalty of like, hey, we're building this together. And so I want the client feedback specifically of like, your situation, what would you feel is fair? What would have been okay for you? Like using that as like kind of action research, like a data set.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, I have a client who's 18 and she makes $200 a month because she's just like, she's an assistant, right? Like, and she's still in high school. And then I have a client who's 56, like, and everything in between. Like, so closer to retirement, has investment properties, everything in between there.
Everything.
Okay. And so, but again, this is like my data set. And I want to figure out what is approachable for the setup fee and then also for
Yeah.
I figured out my pay scale for any kind of follow-up appointments. So that pay scale is going to be 0.1% of your salary. So meaning 45-minute session with me. If you make $25,000 a year, then you would pay me $25. If you make $100,000 a year, then you would pay me $150. So
Oh
it's
wow.
the exact same proportion of your income. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's how I've solved that. But it's still an ongoing kind of thing that we have
Yeah.
to
I feel like
evolve. As we grow, you have more business expenses. So how does that look like?
yeah. I feel like that's something I've been thinking about like recently because there's a course that I have with Rachel Rogers and she talks about like doubling your price because usually we tend to set lower prices. So it's like the first thing you should do is like double your price. But then like when I think about like money coaches or stuff like that, or even like my personal situation right now, I can't afford a money coach. I don't have a job. So it's like how like if I want to be with a money coach, but then or a program where it costs like $2,500 and I don't have
Yeah.
that, it's like okay, and then like I feel like it's also the educating yourself by yourself. Sometimes it's not just that, like you need to talk to somebody, because like for me, I know a lot. Like I opened my high yield savings account, I'm working on opening my Roth IRA,
Nice.
so having normalized conversations about money with my family and all of that. But even like that's not enough, because at the end of the day we're still like on the same level, you could say, where like we're all still trying to figure it out. So yeah, I think like that one, it's a very interesting thing of like how to balance that
Balance,
accessibility.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it'll be probably a little bit easier as I go along. But again, like I'm still in that building stage.
Yeah.
Like RPF is still is really in its infancy still.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm hoping, what I see, like the vision that I have,
Yeah.
is to eventually offer one-on-one coaching, to offer like a course, like kind
Mm-hmm.
of online
Yeah.
with a webinar kind of option. So you do have access to me live.
Yeah.
So that would obviously be more affordable than one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And then also offer, like eventually I would love to write a book. And that's something that I actually had the audacity to start. Like I mean, like nobody's over here like, hey, I want to publish your book, Gaby, but I don't care.
It's like manifestation. Like you already started, and at some point it's gonna.
Exactly. I have the title and everything. Like, um,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny, but so that'll be how eventually I'm able to offer that,
Yeah.
well, abiding by my time.
Yeah.
But there's only one of me.
Yeah.
So it's gonna
Yeah.
take time. I'm hoping that my course comes out in the fall.
Ooh,
Uh,
it's.
when summer hits, like, oh, Gabs has some more free time, and I will obviously be filling it with RPF stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's go with the money, like having more money conversations. Like how, because especially you being a personal finance coach, I imagine that you guys like the things that you learn is it's more like rapid. But what were those money conversations that you were having in the beginning? Those limiting beliefs that you noticed that you had about money, where it's like, okay, this is not okay, and I need to change it to this.
I think I probably like mirrored a lot of the same limiting beliefs that a lot of my clients, a lot of our community has.
Mm.
Is like, so my student loan debt. Oh, I'm just gonna be in debt forever. Like, oh well,
Mm.
I'll just be in debt forever. It's cool. We'll be together forever. Um, what else? Uh, I have no idea how to invest. Like, what the hell does that even mean?
Mm.
Like, oh, I'll just like, I mean, like it gets taken out of my paycheck, so it's like taking care of itself, right?
Mm.
Um, I'll never be able to buy a house. Like I live in,
Mm.
never be able to buy a house. Those are the kinds of scripts, and that's what I call them. And we call them millions. I did not coin this term. Money scripts are a real thing, and they're usually rooted in childhood, based on like what we see.
Yeah.
And they're tied to those scripts, those little limiting beliefs that we have. I remember I had a friend of mine. She's like one of my closest friends. This was when I very, very first started like to get more educated
Mm.
on money in general. And I was like, hey, like, are you investing? Like, are you interested at all in investing? And then she just said, like, no, my family and I, we're not investor people. What does that mean? What do you mean
You
we're not
already closed down the whole
like
possibility.
hmm exactly. Like, first of all, one, what is like I was just super interested in that. What is an investor person and what makes
Mm.
you not an investor person? And can we change that you're not an investor person? Right? These were some of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I'm hearing people talking about. Like, I don't have any room to save. Like, again, like I've been there. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my money. Like, all of these things we can fix. Like, we can talk about it. We can develop it, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
coaching I think is so cool. And um, so far I've been pretty successful in it. Is that we talk about your psychology a lot,
Mm. Yeah.
because effective money management really comes down to habit. Habit
Yeah.
is like understanding your psychology and like building
Mm-hmm.
effective like things that you do, like win this then this, win this then
Mm-hmm.
this, right? um and so yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been like so cool to see my own limiting beliefs like
Mm.
down, and a lot of people in my community also do the same thing. And like now they're asking, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like, can you help me? I'm like, yeah, for sure. Let's figure it out together, you know?
Yeah. I think that's what I like about when we start learning more about this, because you create a ripple effect, not only like to you but like to others who are around you, and you get to have those money conversations, and those terms, like I think like the money, the limiting beliefs that we have is all about like self identity. Like, I'm not an investor. Well, like, of course you're not an investor because none of your family has done it. But then that doesn't mean you can't change your identity. And then the intention behind it, it's also like really important. I don't know. It's like I really do think it's a lot about the psychology as well, mindset, all of that, because that I think that that's your foundation at the end of the day. So if you don't fix that, that's you're gonna keep on thinking that I'm not an investor. I can't buy a house. Like, oh well, I'm gonna be in debt the whole time.
And then at
Um,
that point, it's like you're no better off than when you started. And for again, a lot of the community that I work with, they always talk about like, their parents came here for a better life. Like,
yeah.
so, and in the reality of that is capitalism in the United States, like that's gonna mean like wealth accumulation, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
often tied to those two things. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, now when you were, can you give us like some examples of books or like even like podcasts that you were reading? Because I know you put a post out there with all the book recommendations, like, oh, I read this one, I read this one, I read this one.
yeah, those are some of my favorite. I have so many. Okay, so it depends. I want to talk about like it depends on where you are in your financial journey.
Yeah.
The podcasts get really like nuanced and
Mm-hmm.
talking about numbers and like really what's the best strategy. And that might not be approachable to some people.
Yeah.
But you know, because if you don't have the knowledge, the content knowledge to access something, then it's gonna feel overwhelming and you'll shut down.
Mm.
So I really like in terms of like real estate, and there's also like a bigger pockets money. They have
Mm.
different kinds. They have like a
Yeah.
bigger pockets. It tends to be for like real estate in general. And I think we a lot of the times we forget that real estate is personal finance, but personal finance is not real estate, right?
Mm.
So whenever you buy real estate, that is obviously going to be a part of your personal finance plan, but not all personal finance has to be real estate. With that said,
Mm.
personally, I believe everybody should be homeowners in some form of way. I think homeownership is like should be a right for all of us. Whether or not you live in the house that you buy, that's something,
Mm.
But I think,
Yeah.
and there are certain situations where I guess it wouldn't make sense. Like you move every year or something like that, but I think that's a right that everybody should have. So bigger pockets is great. It can feel a little broy sometimes, but if you get past the bro, it's cool. Let's see, afford anything. I love Paula Pant. I think she's so cool.
Mm.
That's definitely a little bit more like nuanced stuff. So depending on your level, if you've got personal finance knowledge or maybe you're a little bit plus, afford anything is great. And she coined that phrase
Mm.
of like you can afford anything but not everything. And
Mm.
it's really cool because like, hey, yeah, we can do this. You just have to be willing to say no to certain the things that you don't care that much.
Yeah. It goes back
Um,
to intention.
exactly. And then her first 100K, she's got
Mm.
financial fitness.
Tori.
Tori's
I
really
literally just have her book right now. Like,
yeah,
I'm in the library, so I picked up my book, and it's that one, Financial
nice.
Feminist.
Yeah, Financial Feminist is really good. I really liked that book. I read it. I think I pre-ordered it. I was like, yeah, I really like Tori a lot. And then there's also I think it's Millennial Investing.
Mm.
They have they had Erin Lowry as a guest. Lowry, she's the one who wrote the Broke Millennial series.
Mm.
Um, and there's this one episode that I can't remember what it is, but where she talks about her third book is called Broke Millennial Talks Money. So it's in the importance of conversation
Mm.
with your parents. Like, hey, am I gonna have like how's your retirement looking? Am I subsidized? Like what we have to know.
Yeah.
Be able to talk about that so that we can get to an effective plan. Or with your partner and the
Mm.
importance of maybe like prenups or postnups, which I know it's a little controversial. And also like with friends, like, hey, I can't afford a $3,000 bachelorette party, you
Mm.
know? And so I think that's really important because I think you mentioned it earlier, but the importance of talking to your immediate like family, friends, your little community about money, about your finances is huge
Yeah.
because we can all get better together and we can all like abide by our boundaries together. Like
Yeah.
if you afford something at this point or you don't want to allocate the money to that, you know what I mean? Because it's not something that you value, that should be fine. But if we don't have
Mm-hmm.
these conversations, we don't have that open communication, then somebody usually ends up feeling maybe a little resentful, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like those money conversations, like because we don't, at least in our community, because I'm Mexican, so in a Hispanic community or Mexican community, like we don't really, it's a kind of like taboo, or we
Habla
don't
del
talk about
tema.
it.
No, no se habla,
Yeah,
pero no se habla
yeah,
de religión, o sea, yeah.
yeah. So I think it's really important to start normalizing those conversations. And it's funny because in the beginning you mentioned how you should talk to your friends about it too, and we had a Galentine's in February, and one of the questions I asked them, oh, like, do you guys have a high yield savings account? And some of them were like, no, and then others were like, what is that? I'm like, this is my time to teach.
I'm
So
shining.
yes, because now they know what it is. Now I don't know if they got it or not. That's on them. But like now I'm able to tell them like, okay,
Give them the information.
yeah. So now you could use that or not, but it's giving that information and helping them out too. So yeah, normalizing those conversations
Yeah. And
is important.
I know that you are a lot into, excuse me, you're into like mindset a lot. It's
Yeah.
called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. I loved it. I loved it a lot. It's really short, like you could probably read it in like a day. All about like that mindset. Um, yeah, Happy Pocket Full of Money and gosh, what was that other one called? Hold on, let me I have a
And
let
I
me
think I will also like recommend those who are listening, like if you could go get a library card,
oh my God.
like go get one, because you could get I had the library that I have, it has an app, and they have like little apps where they're like partnered with, so
Yeah.
I was able to get audiobooks from them. So literally this past 2 days I listened to 3 books already, and
Yeah.
and I didn't have to pay for nothing. And that's like the whole point of like the library. Like I really do recommend. I wish
Exactly.
the I wish the library would sponsor this, but maybe in the future.
I know, right? The library is so great. I actually like when I had my interview on Wednesday, I mentioned like, "Hey, get a library card, go to the library." And it's just, "Oh my God, like yeah, that's a good question. I don't know why we don't do that." And then
Hmm.
there's this, because a lot of us maybe have different library cards. Maybe we've
Yeah.
moved. So Libby is an app where you can add in all of your
Mm.
cards, and so then you can put in like, "Hey, this book," and maybe your library in LA doesn't have it, but my library in Tucson has it, and
Yeah.
so borrow the book and bring to my Kindle and stuff, or the audio book, like you
Mm.
mentioned. Pretty cool. Um, I think it's called Miracle Morning is also a really good
Miracle,
one.
Miracle Morning.
There's one
Yeah.
here.
Some other books that I personally read is like The Psychology of Money,
Mm-hmm.
The Richest Man of Babylon.
Babylon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else? Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's a lot of like first time readers like who get into that. That's like where they start usually.
Yeah.
Um, the
Rich Dad
thing.
Poor Dad is good. Um, the author's a little intense. um, yeah. So if you want to know the principles a lot, Richest Man in Babylon is basically the
Mm,
same principles that
yeah.
Rich Dad has, but maybe not as abrasive of an author. Yeah. I listened to a podcast. I like because I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I was like, oh, I like this book, like, vibe. And then I listened to him, he was a guest on a Bigger Pockets podcast. I had to turn it off.
Really.
Yeah. It was just like if like he just says things like, if you have a PhD, you're an idiot. And I'm like,
Oh
okay. Like,
really?
yeah, it's just really intense. Um, and then a lot of people know Dave Ramsey, right? Um,
Mm,
Dave Ramsey is big. He does like Total Money Makeover, and he's big on like the save $1,000 and then do the debt avalanche or debt snowball.
mm,
And I think Dave Ramsey was great, but at the same time, he might be a little bit of a product of his time.
mm.
Um, I just think
Yeah.
that the context of young people now and what we are facing is different.
Mm. It's
He's
different.
extremely debt averse, for example. Like, you should never have credit cards and you should be like pay cash for everything. And it's like,
Cash, bro. I don't have cash at all.
Like, homie, or like, yeah, like a wire transfer or something. But like, how I live in Los Angeles. You think that I'm gonna get to a point, like me, a regular person, is going to get to a point where I could just have like $1 million cash to buy a
A
house or
house.
something like that? You know what I mean? Like, that's just
Yeah. I,
context is different.
I feel like that also goes with like you gotta it's like the it's different strategies for every person because like even with the I don't know it's like yeah it goes back to everything. I forgot what my point was, but yeah, it's I'm like oh yeah. But yeah, that's it. Podcast over. No, I'm kidding.
No, yeah, the end. Thank you guys for coming.
I want to move into a bit on the. I have two questions I want to ask because I asked my family of like having money conversations,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, you have to ask her this question. So the first, I kind of like interconnected, where one of them is how do I become aware of the little spendings that I do when I know I don't when it kind of like it adds up and then I know I shouldn't be spending on that. And then yeah, I'll ask the first question and then I'll ask the follow-up
Okay.
question.
How do I become aware of my little expenditures? Like the $2.99 here, the $1.99
Yeah.
here, $99 here. Those like subscriptions that we tend to forget. Yeah. So, well, one of the things that I recommend twice a year to my clients is like twice a year, just pick. I don't care, January 10th and July 10th. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, it could be a birthday gift to yourself and then like a Christmas present to yourself, whatever it
Mm.
is, space it out, go in. Yeah, it'll take you like 20 minutes, but it could save you, those 20 minutes could save you like $48. So that's the big one. Other than that, like a lot of my clients like to use things like Mint or,
Mm.
right? You need a budget. Um, and that can help see where your money is going every day. Some people even just like personally, I just log into my account every day, like, but I have
Mm.
I'm like, where's my money going? Where's my like the more that you know of your incoming outgoing, the better picture you're going to have of your own finances and where you can let take from.
Mm.
Yeah, and where
Yeah.
you're like, I don't need this. I actually still really like that. Like that's fair. Oh my God, I forgot
Mm-hmm.
that. Like we've all done it. We've all been there. And like you
Yeah.
mentioned, that money can add up. I mean, we can end up being like $100 or something like that a month paying in subscriptions that we don't necessarily need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes back to kind of creating that habit of becoming aware of those things. Yeah,
Exactly.
I feel like go for me, and I was actually have that kind of goes with the second question of
Yeah.
like my shout out to my cousin Jazz. She asked this question of like when you got out of you had a big debt, you paid it off, and you were good for a certain amount of time, and then you have debt all over again.
Oh my God.
How do you deal with that? And I asked and I told her like, oh, it kind of goes back to mindset and stuff. But she was like, okay, I get that, but what
But in actuality, what
strategies?
does it look like?
Yeah. So give us
Sure.
the details.
Okay. So, what strategies, basically what you're talking about, I love your answer because you already know that it does have to do with like the mindset, right? And you paid off your debt and you find yourself in it again. So, what that points to is we didn't change the habit. We didn't actually change the habit of becoming anti debt or of becoming, what's the better, like, of having the funds to purchase something, right? Of
Mm,
maybe saving for it before or having a plan, purposeful spending.
yeah.
Um, and I think what happens, like we see that zero on our credit card statement, for example, and it's like, okay, perfect. Like, oh, I can pay for this. I can pay for this. I can pay for this.
Mm,
Like, oh my God, I just racked up $1,200 to whatever it is. And you can't pay for that by the end of the month. And now you're carrying a $400 back. So now you're back in credit card debt.
yeah.
And in that situation, by the way, I had credit card debt. That was something that I definitely struggled with. And
Mm,
I tried different things because I wanted to be experimental about it. I wanted to know what some of like, my clients, like, I don't want to recommend something that I
mm,
haven't. So I tried the whole cash thing. I hated it. I was like, no, like
mm.
I'm not just gonna carry cash around. Like stupid. But I did try it. I was like trying to have an open mind about it. But no, it was stupid. Um, I did also try like two different strategies that I think actually did work well. So one is that I always recommend that we separate your checking accounts. You have two checking accounts. One is that direct deposit. This is your main account where like that's where your pay goes in, and that's where your bills all get automatically paid out. You have it on like automation, right? Automatic bill pay. And then you have another checking account, and that's your fund money. That's your like, that's the amount that you have. You can do whatever you want. That is what is linked to your Cash App, your Venmo. That's where you Zelle from. And that can be a really helpful way to avoid getting into debt or overspending on drinks, eating out, whatever it was, and that's been really effective for people. Some clients are like, okay, I get it, but like I also like having credit card points. I like it. They come up with another strategy, and it still has those two. But the strategy that we have, and it depends on how far along their journey of like money management. Because they'll get to a point where if it's like, hey, you're only supposed to spend $500 a month on fun. Then they get to the point where they're like, okay, you know what? My credit card, I could see it. It's $500. Termino. But as we're building it, so one of the things that I suggested, one of the strategies we used was like, all right, you can use your credit card, but only if you, after swiping your credit card, you sit down at that restaurant and you transfer the money that you just paid. Like immediately. So as you charge the card, your credit card, you're also transferring, right? You're making it on that credit card. So it's still safe. And again, it's that immediacy that's like, oh my God, this is gonna make sense. Right? And I do the reverse of that sometimes for savings. When people are like, I just can't seem to save. I'm like, okay, let's try something for a week. I want you to let's feel what this feels like. Okay, for 1 week, don't eat out. Whenever you have the wanting to eat out, whenever you're like, oh, I really want to, tell me what you would have spent, and then just transfer that to a savings account instead. And all we're doing there, like, I'm not saying, don't think that I'm saying you could never eat out if you want to. All I'm trying to have them realize is like, hey, I actually could. Like, this is sustainable. And then usually when we go from one extreme to like eating out every day, for example, to the other, we end up finding the balance of what feels right. What actually, like, okay, you know what? I could do it 3 times a week. Whatever that's like.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because there's like there's the you shouldn't be spending like the strictness of having a budget, but then also I think that's where Dave Ramsey gets the hate, where it's like you should be strict, but and then there's other money coaches who are like, no, you shouldn't be strict, like you should be able to have fun. But I think it's also important to mention that you need to balance it out, especially like you could spend it out, but then you got to be aware of like what your finances look like, because you can't go to Starbucks every day and buy whatever coffee it is, because it's not gonna be sustainable unless you
can go to Starbucks every day
because you're increasing your income,
or like because you decided that you're not gonna travel. I don't, you know what I mean?
It's like
align,
prioritizing.
Exactly. Align your financial plan to what you value. Like spend on value categories. And it is incredibly empowering for people to feel like, oh my God, no, guilt-free spending. Like you should learn how to budget and how to save and how to invest because of the guilt-free spending alone. Like it feels so great to be like, well, yeah, I like dead ass 100% know that I can afford this coffee, that I can get this massage, that I can go to Paris. You know what I mean? And you're like, I'm meeting all my other targets. I'm meeting my savings target. I'm meeting my like Roth target. I'm investing correctly. Like my savings rate's like 28%. I'm good,
Yeah, and I think it goes back with the mindset of there's like some people who believe, oh, you can only have one or the other, but that's where we got to change our mindset. And it's like, no, we can have both. We just got to figure out how. So yeah, that's totally. It goes back again, mindset, aligning with what you're prioritizing, and being intentional with that. That's also we're almost like at the 1 hour mark, but what are, for those who do want to start their financial journey, what advice would you give them? And it could be either steps or like steps that they should do, like how you use savings account, emergency fund, all of that, or just like mindset stuff or books that they should, like, this is the first read or something like that.
Hit me up. No, just kidding.
Links down below.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Make sure to like and subscribe. No, okay. So if you're first starting out, I'm gonna give you the same advice that I always give. It's start out with the free accessible information, right? And there's so much free content on there that is high quality content.
Yeah.
Um, but make sure one that you vibe with the creator, that the personal
Mm.
finance expert, right? Like, are
Yeah.
they talking about like shame-based stuff? In which case, abort for sure. Or are they, do they speak in a way that actually you actually understand, right?
Mm.
Or are they able to explain complex things in a way that it makes a difference for you, right?
Mm.
So start with that, and start with like most of us, honestly, who provide free content, we have book lists, podcast lists, recommendations. And if you find like a personal finance expert, someone like me or someone, in my field that you vibe with, and then they give you all this other stuff that you can have access to, the
Yeah.
library is free. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
um podcasts you can listen to for free, right? So start with those things. And then as you find the strategy that's like, okay, I want to try this out, then go to potentially booking a session or potentially
Mm.
class. But let's not go directly to like, I'm going to sign up for this and spend all the money before you actually know if it'll be worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Um, do you have for I this is kind of like interesting, maybe like a conversation where when 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 should you, I forgot my question.
When should you get financial literacy?
When should you start investing, like once you, like if you, I don't know how to explain it, but like when should you start like getting a financial coach where you where like you already got this information but it's still not working out.
At what point do you need to go to one-on-one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if something inside of you is telling you like, hey, I need one-on-one, probably time.
There you go.
You can think about it like therapy, if that thought comes into your mind, like, go ahead and book a session, honey. Like, it's
Hmm.
probably time. But if you get to the point where you're like on your journey, you found your free content, you're reading, you're or listening to books, and you're like,
Mm.
you can see that effectively manifesting into your day-to-day life. Like you
Mm.
see those changes, you're like, hey, wow, my savings account now has $200 in it, and it only had 20 before, right?
Mm.
And like, great, that seems like cool. What's working is all right. But if you're not seeing the change, if
That's
it's not connecting, then it might be time.
okay.
Um,
It's time for me.
yeah, it's time. You know what I mean? It's time. It's time for me. It's time for Gabs. Um, and sometimes people just need a tiny little bit of accountability. So just
Mm.
knowing that I'm gonna be like, hey, how's it going? Is gonna be like, oh my God, that's enough.
Yeah.
No, I never yell at my clients, and no, I never, but it's just the accountability piece is huge. Like, hey, did you
Yeah.
actually transfer, make, yeah, set up the automatic bill pay? Is that, or.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've been seeing in my family. My mom recently, she got a life coach. So she was like, in the first session she would pretty much talk about herself, like and what she's had to deal with. And then at the end she was like, but why did I just pay this amount of money and I just talked for like an hour? And but then she started reflecting, and then she's like, okay, but I need to talk to him next week. What am I gonna say? What questions do I need to ask? And she was like, it did help me because I was able to reflect more, and I was able to hold myself more accountable. Like, oh, I need to make these changes, and now I have these questions, so now I get to ask the questions. So yeah, I think yeah, that's really cool. Before we end, I usually ask two questions, or I'm gonna start asking these two questions. The first one is like, for those who think no se lo merecen, that they don't deserve like starting a business, a side hustle, whatever it is. What advice would you give them, or a little pep talk you could say?
Si no tú, entonces ¿quién? Like, si no tú, entonces ¿quién? Y si no ahorita, ¿cuándo?
Mm.
Honestly, I feel like sometimes being shorter with our words is better. Like, if you have an idea and if you think that it's viable, then go for it. Shoot your shot. What's the worst thing that'll happen? And
Yeah.
oftentimes the absolute worst thing that'll happen is like status quo, that I'm still in the exact same situation.
Yeah.
So then, okay, you know what I mean? Like, what did you actually lose for it?
Mm-hmm.
And never be afraid to pivot. right?
Mm,
And I think what happens is like we try something, we try something, we try something, and it's not exactly working. Like pivot a little, right? Like sometimes
yeah.
it's just a little bit of a positioning that changes. Um, yeah, and I experienced that too. Like at the moment that I started saying I'm a personal finance coach, I specialize in working with the first gen BIPOC community. I 3x my clients, and it's the exact community I want to work with. You know what I mean? That it was a
Yeah.
pivot. It was so like seemingly miniature, but it
Mm-hmm.
was something that just had such dramatic effect.
Yeah,
Um,
and oh yeah,
yeah,
good, good.
no, no más. Go for it.
I was gonna say it goes with like identity because it goes with identity or like and I don't know if you're like into this, but there's like this thing called saltos cuánticos
Sí,
where it's literally like you change from one day to another because you change your identity of who you are. Like
yeah,
from I'm not a personal life coach or money coach to I am a personal finance coach. So
exactly.
that creates a feeling inside of you where it makes you kind of change and then start acting like that person. So
Exactly.
yeah.
It's almost like I tell my kids, who maybe like I'm very spiritual, I'm pretty like manifested to be honest, but
Yeah.
um I kind of explain it as like the more accessible. I quickly make it like, okay, you're not this person. How would you act if you were?
Mm,
Okay? And
yeah.
oftentimes like that psychology piece is so because if like for example, again, I'm a music teacher, so like the when we think about practicing our instrument, we're actually using the exact same parts of our brains than when we actually
Mm,
when you think about being that person, when you think, how would this person act? Are you going to be using the same parts of your brain as if you were just like automatically going to do that? And eventually,
mm,
it's going to be such a habit to
yeah.
think like that person. You will just automatically think like that person. Ergo, you are that person. You
Yeah,
know
it goes back to repetition.
exactly.
The compound effect where like repetition, repetition, habit, 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 and then it's like bam, you're that.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
but,
this.
yeah.
Shoot, I was gonna just say a quote and I forgot it. Maybe it'll come back to me. Go ahead.
um, before I ask you the last question, how did you become a music teacher and what instruments do you play? I mean, I'm pretty sure you do, right? You can't
Yeah,
be a
I
you
do.
can't.
No,
You can't.
I don't play any music. So the violin's my main instrument. I
Mm.
started playing music when I was like 3. I started playing piano. And then when I went to elementary school, I actually went to a bilingual school with a mariachi program.
Oh
So I started
wow.
mariachi. Entonces, desde los 11 años sabía que quería ser una maestra de música. I went to school for that. So I went to undergrad for that. I went to
Mm.
master's degree. So yeah, I've been doing this for like 10 years now.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I love it. It's so much fun. And I think what's really cool is uh, like it's just I've really developed like a craft, and I know that I'm
Mm.
very good at getting um people, children especially, to understand higher
Mm.
level like concepts. Um
Mm.
and that is something that I like. My pedagogy is something that I directly take into my business, because at the
Mm.
end of the day what I'm selling is my ability to teach you,
Yeah.
my ability to empower you with what you need. Like I'm probably the only one of the only like personal finance coaches who's like, I want you to fire me. I want you to be like, you know what? Thank you so much. Like I'm good. I've graduated. Yes, honey. Thank God. So this is not meant to be like a forever relationship, you and me.
Mm.
I want you to graduate. I want you to culminate and
Graduate.
not need me anymore. So that's always the goal. I remembered the quote actually. Quote that I have is one of my favorites is, and it kind of deals with like goal setting, limiting beliefs. It's like
Mm.
set a goal so big that you can't accomplish it until you become the person who can.
The person you,
The
what was
person
it?
who can.
You can.
Set a
Mm.
goal so big that you can't accomplish it until you become the person who can.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah. Very cool.
My my last question is when you started this whole journey, the business, or maybe even like the music, like your career as a music teacher, what were those experiences that you were like holy crap, I can't believe this happened to me, and I'm like so grateful for it. That you yeah, like you never really imagined that if you hadn't started, it's like
Yeah.
damn, this wouldn't have happened. So what were those? You
So
can tell
much.
as many as you can.
um, I've had a really, I mean, honestly, like I've had a really cool life. So like I'm really happy. I'm 30, and I'm really proud of my life and how it's happened and how my community is like so curated and like, but like not in a fake way, in like a very purposeful way.
Mm.
So for example, if I hadn't stayed in Tucson in Arizona, where I went to college, and
Mm.
that was not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go out of state because, but I stayed there, and because I already had a network there, I already had so many connections. I was able to stack my resume with
Mm.
experience because they already knew me. And so, long story short, that's why as soon as I graduated, I got a job teaching at an international school in Ecuador. So
Oh
I was
wow.
teaching music at a really, really high level. Like international schools are known for being some of the best pedagogical areas that you
Mm.
can be in. And so I'm 22. My first 2 years of teaching, I was with incredible teachers, like
Wow.
who are never settled and who always wanted something better and
Mm.
better and better and better, right? Then, like, fast forward, if I hadn't done that, I hadn't met Luz, I wouldn't have gotten married. I wouldn't have ended up in LA opening a school. Like, I went from having zero instruments, zero inventory to now I have like a $250,000 inventory. And
Wow.
that was the thing, like, I figured out how to start a music program from having nothing for the entire first semester. Like, I had nothing, nothing.
Wow.
How do you teach band and orchestra without that, right? Um, and again, like what I was developing there is like buy-in. Like I can get students, I can get which teenagers, by the way, love them, but they're hard to convince to do things. So I can get teenagers to buy into something that they wouldn't normally do. I can get like parents, like stakeholders involved.
Mm.
Written and won grant applications, But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have, if I hadn't moved to LA and I hadn't started teaching in Maywood, I would not realize the huge need that I had for like
Mm.
for RPF, for realistic personal finance within this community specifically.
Mm.
If I hadn't done that, probably wouldn't have gotten into Columbia. If I hadn't gotten into Columbia, then I wouldn't have debt. If I hadn't had debt, then I wouldn't have need to actually get myself educated.
Mm.
And right. And then
Yeah.
if I hadn't gone to Columbia, like I probably wouldn't have won a Fulbright. And my Fulbright is what sent me to Ghana. And like Ghana, I started to deal with more like more identity based conversation. Like it's just
Mm.
is crazy how life works in this way, And
Mm-hmm.
it's just such a beautiful, chaotic thing.
Yeah,
A
and
be-
wait, I didn't hear the last part.
it's
Sorry.
a beautiful mess. That's all.
Yeah, and a lot of like the spiritual stuff or personal development. It's you shouldn't see a specific situation as good or bad, because
Mhm.
like you said, like that it's not like people will say, oh, it's bad, but it wouldn't have taken you to where you are now, like learning about all this stuff. So yeah,
Exactly.
don't judge the. I think there's a quote about that. I'm not sure, but yeah, don't judge the situation. At the end, do you have any others like maybe like your first big month with RPF or
Um, this month we're in it. We're in it right now. This week. This week. Um, yeah, like I mentioned, I had to put on like a vacation response automatic, like
mm.
and it doesn't say that I'm on vacation. It just you can like template it where it was like, hey, if you're interested in coaching, this is our Calendly. This is more about what we do. Blah blah blah.
Mm.
I'm sure you probably got it if you emailed me.
Yeah.
Like, I was getting so many emails that I could not get to them
mm.
in time. And most of them were like, I want to do a coaching session. So I was like, cool, here's your
Mm.
Calendly.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, it's just 3x clients in like 2 weeks. That's crazy. Like
Yeah.
that's a crazy amount of growth. And I went from 4,300 followers to like
So
12.1-ish now.
yeah.
Again, the same amount of time off of one video. And in 1 week, the span of 1 week, I had an interview with Huffington Post, HuffPost, and
Mm-hmm.
an article that's coming out tomorrow. I had a creator brunch that was like yesterday, like invited to, and like she invited me to be like on her advisory board
Oh
as like
wow.
the financial expert. Yeah. And then, I had a pod like you, like with podcasts. It's like it's cool. It's so amazing to feel like what I'm doing matters for people because I felt it. I felt it in here. But I'm seeing it's like the fruits of my labor, I guess,
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just excited for everything this is just the beginning.
It is. It is just the beginning. I'm so excited for you, and congrats on like all the things that
Yeah.
has been happening and it's gonna be happening. For those who want to learn more about you or want to do a coach session with you, Where can they find you? All of that.
So follow us on TikTok or Instagram, RPF Education. My Instagram is like a work in progress, I will say. I'm
No,
getting a little
same.
better about TikTok. Send us an email, rpfeducation@gmail.com. Our website should be up within a few weeks too.
Mm.
But yeah, it's really exciting times. I hope that you can become part of our community.
Yeah, I'll definitely leave the links below for those who want to do that and make it easier for you. And then I want to thank you, Gabby, for being here. I appreciate it so much because you're part of like this project that I'm trying to build and those conversations that I want to have. So thank you for that. And then for those who are listening, don't forget to give us a review in Apple Podcast or Spotify. That really supports the podcast so much. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, all of that. Again, it really helps us out. And yeah, with that being said, thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you all of you for listening. Bye.
I see ya.